If you're a survivor of sexual assault, you might carry one especially distressing question. It's a very common question that survivors of sexual trauma ask in therapy, and that is, if my body responded with signs of arousal during the assault, what does that mean about me, about the assault, or about consent? It's really common for survivors to feel confused, ashamed, and sometimes even betrayed by their own bodies after such an experience. Physical arousal during a sexual assault, including things like lubrication, an erection, or even an orgasm, is a very well-documented involuntary bodily response, and it's a form of what's called arousal non-concordance. So this does not signal consent, pleasure, or some secret desire for what's happening. It's simply not under your conscious control, and it does not change the nature of what happened to you. And most importantly, it does not mean that you've provided consent. So let's take a moment to explain what happens and why it occurs. I'm going to be pulling information from elements of trauma psychology and, of course, sexual health research. So let's talk about why the body responds. First, we have to understand how the nervous system works. Our bodies have an automatic survival system called the autonomic nervous system, or the ANS. This system manages the involuntary processes in our body, like heart rate and sexual response. And it has two main parts. First, the sympathetic nervous system gets the body ready for danger or excitement. This might be most evident when you think about your fight or flight response. The parasympathetic nervous system, or the other half of the autonomic nervous system, is all about that rest and digest. So in other words, it calms the body, and it's also responsible for physiological sexual responses, such as lubrication or an erection. So during a sexually traumatic event, these systems can either misfire or they can overlap. So threat and terror can push the body into a really confusing state, sometimes leading to really unexpected or paradoxical physical responses, such as involuntary arousal. The science and research in trauma and sexual medicine shows that several things can cause the body to respond this way during an assault or during sexual abuse. Let's talk first about protective reflexes. So sometimes the body may trigger lubrication or erection to lessen the potential injury from the assault. This is an automatic defensive response, much like how your eyes water to protect against debris. It is not a sign of pleasure, and it is not a sign of consent. So high arousal overlap. So with extreme fear and sexual arousal, both can cause physiological sensations in the body, like a rapid heartbeat or heightened senses. In states of panic, the nervous system might send mixed signals. The body's danger response and the sexual arousal response share overlapping circuits. So these wires can get crossed under extreme stress. Next, let's talk about tonic immobility, or the freeze response. When fighting back or escaping isn't possible in a threatening situation, the body goes into a freeze response. This is an ancient survival reaction known as tonic immobility, and it can lead to things like numbness, paralysis, or dissociation. And even in this frozen state, the body can still react physically to touch or to stimulation. Let's talk about how trauma can cause the mind to disconnect from the body. This is called dissociation, and it's a protective form of checking out. Meanwhile, the body may continue to respond reflexively even when the mind is somewhere else. And that's a really important way that our mind protects us from the reality of what's happening in the moment of a threat, an assault, or an abuse. Let's think about what it all means and untangle the body and the mind. The most important thing to understand is that your body's involuntary physical response has nothing to do with consent, desire, or blame. It's an automatic reaction, like a reflex. It's not a choice. And it's designed to reduce harm, either physical harm or psychological harm, and it is not signaling agreement or consent. It does not erase or lessen the reality of the trauma that you experienced. The clash between what you felt emotionally and how your body reacted physically can create a lot of confusion, a lot of distress, and sometimes this is known as post-traumatic arousal shame. The suffering is real, and if this has happened to you, please know you are not alone. Unfortunately, some perpetrators intentionally provoke or take advantage of these physiological responses, sometimes in an effort to gaslight or further blame the survivor. So if someone ever says something like, well, your body liked it or you wanted it, just remember that if that's not your truth, then someone is saying that as a tool of manipulation and abuse. Any body response that occurred during a traumatic event is a survival reflex, not evidence of consent. If this is something that sounds familiar and mirrors what happened to you, again, please know this response is very common and it is not your fault. I'm making this video to help survivors and the people who care about survivors understand the science that can help release some of that misplaced shame. If this is something that's happened to you and you feel a lot of distress around it, it might be really hard to do, but please try and practice some self-compassion. Really respond to yourself with kindness, the way you might respond to a friend. If seeking support feels like it could be helpful for you, working with a trauma-informed therapist or talking with other people who really understand what can happen during a sexual assault can be invaluable. You deserve to heal at your own pace, and your story matters. You can reach out to us or reach out to other sources. In fact, one of my favorite hotlines is the National Sexual Assault Hotline, which is 1-800-656-HOPE. We will put that down in the notes below. Experiencing physical arousal during a sexual assault is a physiological reflex, not a sign of consent or desire. Your trauma is real. Feeling violated is valid. And the responsibility for the assault lies solely and completely with the perpetrator. My hope today is that in watching this video and understanding a little bit more about the science behind your body's response, you might be able to separate the biological realities from the psychological meaning of what happened and release yourself from the burden of any misplaced shame, reclaim the truth of your experience, and feel a little bit safer and a little bit more trusting in your body. So if this felt like something that was meaningful for you, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a question or your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.